Hey y'all, today we are talking about the key organizations and the leaders that led the conservative movement during the decade of the 1980s. So, as usual, I've got some guided notes. Follow along with me and fill those notes as we go through the video. So, we are starting with who is president during this time. This man pictured here, this is Ronald Reagan. He was a Republican and he was president for most of the entire decade of the 80s, from 1981 to 1989. So, fun fact about Ronald Reagan is he was actually formerly a Hollywood actor. He acted in a number of movies in like the 40s and 50s, and he was president of the Screen Actors Guild, a huge organization that represents people in Hollywood all over the country. That's what he did before getting into politics, running for governor of California, and then eventually becoming our president. And Reagan's a pretty funny guy. I want to show you a clip from one of my favorite sort of Reagan moments. In this clip, you're going to see Ronald Reagan and his opponent, the Democrat, debating on stage. And he gets asked a question about his age because he is one of our older presidents. And the way he handles it is pretty funny.
Mr. Truitt, your question to President Reagan. Mr. President, I want to raise an issue that I think has been lurking out there for 2 or 3 weeks and cast it specifically in national security terms. You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
I love how even in that clip, his opponent, Mr. Mondale, there, knows that he got him. And a pretty funny moment during the debates. Reagan is known for these like quick one-liners, for being really approachable, self-deprecating, and you see that certainly in the debate. Okay, so a little bit more about Ronald Reagan. How are we going to describe him politically? We're going to describe Ronald Reagan as a conservative. So this is one of our vocabulary words, and it means people who have political values that are a bit more traditional, right? Traditional attitudes, sometimes or often based in religion, and these are people who value small government. So we associate conservatives with the Republican Party. This is a famous quote from Ronald Reagan. I think it summarizes his opinion on government beautifully. He says, "Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem." And so the decade of the 80s can be characterized by less government, right? Where people like Reagan and others who agree with him think that government's getting a little too much into everybody's business and they want to scale that back. Another interesting fact, I suppose, about Ronald Reagan is he did survive an assassination attempt. He was actually shot in his first term as president. He was okay, or he survived, of course. But there is another funny moment I want to share with you. This is another famous video clip of Ronald Reagan, and let me play it and then I'll explain.
By its very existence and character, Berlin remains the most compelling argument for an open world. We're reminded of the many traditions of openness and democracy that have marked the history of this city. Amir missed me.
I cannot help but kind of laugh at that clip. He survives an assassination attempt a couple months later. This was nothing scary. This was just a balloon popping. But of course, it sounded for a minute like a gunshot there. And he, without missing a beat, cracks a joke. Right? This is the humor that that a lot of people really love and respect about Ronald Reagan. His ability to just kind of go with it and to make light of a sometimes serious situation. Okay, so that brings me to guns. So he survives an assassination attempt, and that kind of got me thinking about some of the other big groups that come to power, becoming more influential during the 80s. And that leads me to the NRA. So the National Rifle Association is a group that becomes a bit more popular in the 80s. It's a gun rights advocacy group. Sorry, I got cut off there, but it says advocacy group that started in the 1980s to promote shooting and marksmanship, right, as guns as sports. And the NRA decided to endorse Ronald Reagan. It was their first time ever getting political. Now we know the NRA as like a political group, a group that exists to promote their interests in our politics. NRA gets its start in the 80s. We can also describe the NRA as a lobbying group or a lobbyist, which is someone or a group of people that tries to influence politics. So we see here, the NRA is concerned about Second Amendment rights, the right to bear arms, and so they promote this at the government level so that their ideas and their members can continue to, I guess, have access to guns. Something obviously very controversial still today. Okay, quick couple of slides here. Two other groups that come to power, looking back at our essential question, what are those key organizations? We have a group called the Moral Majority and a group called the Heritage Foundation. We can associate both of these terms with conservative groups that become powerful politically in the 1980s. So the Moral Majority is Christian. It's a conservative group, and they work to help elect Ronald Reagan. They identified with his religion. They wanted to see a person like that in the White House. The Heritage Foundation is another lobbying group, right? A group that exists to promote its issues to our government. And they promoted a lot of conservative policies. So they would often, do the work, provide maybe a brief, a short, a packet of information, right, to people in the Reagan administration, so they could read about it and then do the thing they wanted them to do. So we're going to end on this. Reagan is a very controversial president. People either love him or hate him. One thing we can say for sure, right, that's not political, is that Reagan was the most political president since FDR. And Franklin Roosevelt was president during World War II. So it's been a minute, right? It's been about 30 years since that event. You could probably still argue today, he's one of the most influential presidents of all time. He changed the way many things in our country function, and he started this new movement of conservatism that we are seeing a resurgence of today. Awesome. That's our last slide, guys. Our guided notes look a little bit like this. So hopefully you have this part done. Go ahead and fill in that summary section for me. That's your own summary in your own words, right? Not copied from your neighbor, but just go ahead, take a look over what we just talked about and summarize that on the bottom of your guided notes. Then check out the screen so you can see what we are doing next on the back of your notes. You'll be turning all of this work into me today. Thanks, y'all.